Well, amid all of the court cases and applications and discussions and, dare I say, arguments about load shedding and our power crisis, there's been a suggestion, a reported suggestion by President Cyril Ramaphosa that he may not have ultimate responsibility for dealing with the electricity system. At the moment, a group of organizations have gone to court. They argue that the President must end load shedding. He's one of the people cited. Or that there must be an explanation as to why the load shedding problem is so deeply rooted. But the President appears to be arguing that he may not be ultimately responsible for the provision of electricity. Mpumelelo Zikalala is a legal expert. He's an attorney. He joins us now. Mpumelelo, good afternoon to you. I think you tweeted a copy of the presidential oath, so the oath that Ramaphosa took at that stadium one Saturday when he was inaugurated. How does that oath relate to the electricity crisis?
It's related in this particular manner. Basically, the oath which was taken by the president was to say, I'm going to do my ultimate best to ensure that all the entities in which I'm responsible for or that report to me are able to provide their work in terms of the Constitution in line with the applicable legislation. Now, what that means is that if you look at Section 85, let's call it the job description of the president because he has to work together with the cabinet. That's what it says. They must be able to exert the executive authority and be able to render those services. Part and parcel of those services is to ensure that you and I are able to speak like this because we need electricity to do so. So the president cannot come and say it is not my legal duty to ensure that electricity is being provided. It is his legal duty. In fact, as per the Constitution, that is what it ought to do. If we were to accept the explanation by the president, it would be absurd because it would be like saying, the CEO saying that it's not my responsibility that the HR department is not working because I'm not the CEO. You must go and speak with the CEO. The buck will start and stop with the president. And in this case, it is the president that must ensure that our lights are working by making sure that whoever that is going to deploy or put in place to be the minister of the executive authority of ESCOM or public enterprises is able to render the services and the job in the manner in which they're supposed to do so.
Okay, but I imagine, because I was thinking of arguments against this, so I presume one of those arguments could be it's impossible to do this quickly, and he could probably bring several experts. I mean, I know several experts who would say the same thing, that for the next 2 years, it's impossible to resolve load shedding.
Now, that is what you are supposed to do. You are not supposed to say it's not my job, so don't come and ask me as to how we are going to provide the solution. The response ought to have been, this is what you are doing to make sure that you are able to end load shedding, and these are the individuals in which are employed to ensure that they're able to render those particular services. The most expected response would then be, the person who has been at the helm of ESCOM, for example, at the helm of the particular ministry cannot be able to do their job. They have tried, they have failed, or even if they haven't failed, this is what they have done to ensure that they're able to provide these particular services. And this is what I'm doing, or that I'm going to do to make sure that you have a different result. If the president does not come with solutions, but clearly comes with his hands up in the air and says, I'm not responsible for that particular job or attaining that particular or delivering electricity at the end of the day. That's exactly what the president cannot say, because as per the Constitution, the executive authority as per Section 85 rests with him and his cabinet members.
So I do wonder, I'm a bit cynical about this application, because I think the argument could also go, the president can say, and I accept everything you say, Mpumelelo, I'm not arguing with you, well, not yet. The argument could also go that he could say, I am doing everything that I'm supposed to do. I've got an energy minister, I've got a public enterprises minister who's authority for ESCOM, there's a board, etc., etc., etc. So the applicants would have to prove that he's not working to fix the electricity crisis. And if he says that he is, the onus would be on the applicants to prove that he's not, which would actually be quite difficult to do.
It would be quite difficult, however, quite easy in another sense. All that is being asked from the president is to say to him, are you providing your role of monitoring the performance of the people that have been involved or are deployed in that particular position? How do you do that? You have various entities which then allow you to make your job easier. You have your audit committees, you have your parliamentary committee, you have the minister that reports to you, and also politically the minister can even report there because you come from the same political party. So, Mr. President, all that we want to hear from you is to say, I've placed specific timelines and targets in which you're supposed to be attained on a certain date. The non-attainment of those particular targets is not because it is because of circumstances beyond the control of the people that have been deployed or tasked to do that particular activity. If that's the case, let me change them so that I'm able to redeploy or put in individuals that will be able to deliver the type of expectation and objective that you are looking for. What this application is about indirectly is to say, you are not providing your role or playing your role of being a big brother. You are not providing performance management and consequence management when it comes to this type of matters. We've been hearing the same story all over again, and yet we lose money on a daily basis, and our lives are being disrupted only because you're putting individuals which are not able to deliver. We may not be able to come and call up their competencies, whether they know what they're doing or not, but the results speak for themselves. The mere fact that within an hour's time we're going to have load shedding here in Durban speaks to this particular fact of that they failed. If you have failed to attend a particular job, you should be removed and another person should then come in. The person who is charged with making sure that you're able to perform must also do that job by removing you. If we are going to accept the status quo, that means the level of holding the executive accountable, the level of holding the president accountable is not going to be attained, especially when he has promised us when he took that oath of office that he's going to do all that he can to ensure that you are able to work optimally, especially when Section 85 places a positive duty on him to act in a manner of making sure that you are able to monitor whether the performance of those cabinet or the ministers that you have deployed in various departments are doing their job. If they are not doing that job, the only option that there is, because Parliament has failed to hold them accountable, is to take you to court and force your hand to remove that particular minister and replace them hopefully with someone who's going to provide a better job.
So Mpumelelo, I think probably everyone listening to you is nodding quite furiously as you speak, right? But that's all fine. But isn't everything you've said a political statement and not a legal statement? Let me explain what I mean. I promised that you and I might argue. Here we go, okay. So the argument would go like this. Everything you say is political, and it's actually up to voters. It's not about judges. Because what you're saying, because the appointment to cabinet is a political appointment, right? It's a political appointment. The only condition is that only 2 members of cabinet don't have to come from the National Assembly. The rest, they're voted in. That's the process. So you could extend the argument to say that the Minister of Women has failed because of gender-based violence. The Minister of Labour, Presidency, has failed because of unemployment. I could go on, but we don't have that much time. My point is that if there is a problem, isn't it really supposed to be solved politically? To put it another way, I don't know that a judge would be comfortable ordering a president to fire a cabinet minister.
The judge is coming into this particular position or this particular matter and saying, I want you to make sure that you are able to act in a manner in which you ought to act in. In this case, Mr. President, your executive authority and your ability or to use your discretion whether to employ or to fire someone must be exercised in a manner in one way or another. Now, if you fail to come to a conclusion that someone has failed, there's no other way in which you can either force you to fire that person, other than forcing a new political party to then come in, which is going to take us a number of years before we do that. I think it's about plus minus a year before we go to the next elections. Or the next thing to do is to say, let me go to court and say to them, you are failing in terms of the duties in which you are supposed to do, Mr. President. Section 85 is very clear as to your duties and the way in which you are supposed to perform. If you fail to perform in that particular manner, I have no option as a member of the public than to go to court so that your hand is forced to look at the performance of the minister. And if the performance, rationally speaking and reasonably speaking, is in such a state in which a reasonable minister would not perform in the particular manner in which they have done so, and a reasonable president would have taken the initiative, positive act of firing them because they failed to perform, this is what the court is forcing you to do. For a lesser, maybe lesser manner of providing that particular order would then be to say, we are forcing you, Mr. President, to evaluate the performance of this minister. And if this minister is not able to perform, then please fire them. We know that you can't tell who to fire and who to hire, but we can at least force you to say that look and monitor their performance and make sure that they're able to deliver as to what is expected from us. Where do we get that from? It's easy. The Constitution tells us what is expected from us. Other legislation like the PFMA is very clear as to what is it that we need to do to maintain and to protect those particular entities and to make sure that they're effective and they deliver the services expected.
Mpumelelo Zikalala, thank you. Legal analyst. Of course, the President could just publish the agreements, the evaluation agreements, the monitoring agreements that ministers are supposed to sign.